Rokus Coenji, the ostentatious and self-proclaimed perfect student of Class D in Classroom of the Elite, is a dazzling enigma, a narcissist whose flamboyant confidence, physical strength, and sporadic bursts of intellectual brilliance set him apart from his peers. His refusal to engage in the advanced nurturing high school's competitive struggles, coupled with his cryptic displays of superiority, makes him a wild card, acting on whims rather than strategy. But what if Koenji was born and raised in the White Room, the secretive facility that forged Kiyotaka Ayanokoji into a cold, calculating genius through relentless psychological and physical conditioning? This theory posits that the White Room's brutal regimen would amplify Koenji's inherent traits, his narcissism, physical gifts, and intellectual potential into a volatile and terrifying force, distinct from Ayanokoji's restrained precision. Koenji's flamboyant personality would clash with the facility's utilitarian cruelty, creating a being who either transcends its control or becomes its most dangerous product, a wild card capable of reshaping the White Room and the world beyond with his unpredictable brilliance. The result could be a dazzling yet destructive entity, embodying both the White Room's ideals of perfection and its ultimate failure, threatening to unravel systems with his chaotic ego. In Classroom of the Elite, the White Room is a crucible of torment, a sterile environment where children are subjected to grueling tests of intellect, endurance, and survival to eliminate weakness and produce the perfect human, as described in the light novels, volume 11.5. Ayanokoji emerges as a detached strategist, his adaptability honed to perfection, but Koenji's unique traits would interact with this environment in a radically different way. In the series, Koenji displays exceptional physical abilities, outswimming trained athletes in Volume 4's Special Exam and showcasing agility in Volume 8's Sports Festival, and intellectual sharpness, solving complex problems when he deigns to participate, as seen in Volume 9's unanimous voting exam. His narcissism, however, is his defining feature. He proclaims himself a beautiful existence, Volume 6, and often refuses to cooperate, prioritizing his own desires over class goals. Born into the White Room, Koenji's confidence would be both a strength and a liability. He'd excel in physical and intellectual trials, leveraging his natural gifts to dominate peers. But his refusal to conform, evident in his defiance of Horikita's leadership and the school's expectations, would make him a disruptive force, challenging the White Rim's rigid control and reshaping its dynamics in his image. The evidence for this theory lies in the synergy between Koenji's established traits and the White Room's brutal environment. In the light novels, Koenji's sporadic brilliance suggests untapped potential. He solves problems effortlessly when motivated, as in Volume 11's exam strategies, hinting at a mind capable of rivaling Ayanokoji's. His physical prowess, seen in his athletic dominance, would thrive in the White Room's grueling training, where physical challenges test endurance and resilience. However, his narcissism would clash with the facility's utilitarian philosophy, which demands obedience and suppression of individuality. The White Room's instructors, expecting compliance, would struggle to contain Koenji's ego, which refuses to bend to external authority. Unlike Ayanokoji, who adapts by blending into the shadows, Koenji would flaunt his superiority, perhaps taunting instructors with his effortless victories or sabotaging rivals to prove his dominance. His charisma, evident in how he captivates classmates despite his aloofness, Volume 7, could make him a leader among subjects, rallying them to challenge the system or exploiting their weaknesses for his own amusement, much like he toys with Class D's dynamics by withholding his contributions. The White Room's impact on Koenji would amplify his traits into a force both dazzling and terrifying. Where Ayanokoji's training produces a scalpel-like precision, Koenji's would create a wildfire, uncontrolled, radiant, and destructive. His physical strength would be pushed to superhuman levels, making him a living weapon capable of outperforming any opponent in the facility's combat or endurance tests. His intellect would be sharpened through relentless problem-solving, potentially surpassing Ayanokoji's strategic depth, as hinted by his ability to predict exam outcomes when he chooses to engage. However, his narcissism would resist the White Room's attempts to break his individuality, viewing their perfect human ideal as a flawed imitation of his own existence. In Volume 6, Koenji's refusal to align with Class D's goals unless it suits him suggests he'd defy the White Room's authority, excelling in tests to mock their standards rather than serve them. He might see the instructors as inferior, mere pawns in a game he's already won, and use his charisma to manipulate them, much like he sways classmates with his theatrical flair. Koenji's presence would reshape the White Room's dynamics, turning it into a psychological battlefield. He could form a cult-like following among weaker subjects, offering them a twisted sense of purpose, convincing them that the White Room's suffering is meaningless and that following him is their only salvation. This mirrors his ability to command attention in Class D, despite his disengagement. Alternatively, he might target the strongest subjects, like a proto-Ayanokoji, using their ambition against them to create chaos. Imagine Koenji identifying a rival's hidden fear, perhaps instilled by the White Room's punishments, and exploiting it to drive them to a mental breakdown during a critical exam, all while maintaining an impeccable record. The White Room's surveillance, cameras, psychological evaluations, would force him to refine his manipulation, making his actions appear as natural consequences of the facility's pressure, much like he deflects blame in the school by feigning disinterest. His defiance could escalate to direct challenges, such as refusing to complete a test unless it meets his standards, forcing instructors to bend their rules or risk losing control. The darker implications of this theory are where Koenji's White Room upbringing turns sinister. He wouldn't just survive the facility, he'd either transcend it or destroy it. His narcissism could lead him to see himself as the true embodiment of perfection, rejecting the White Room's vision as beneath him. He might orchestrate a revolt, using his charisma to rally subjects against instructors, turning the facility into a war zone. Picture Koenji convincing half the subjects that their training is a lie, inciting them to sabotage critical experiments or attack their overseers, leaving the White Room's sterile halls stained with chaos. Alternatively, he could take a subtler approach, manipulating an instructor into leaking the facility's secrets to the outside world, exposing its atrocities and collapsing its funding. The instructors, trained to enforce control, would be powerless against Koenji's ability to turn their methods against them, revealing the fragility of their system. If Koenji embraced the White Room's training, he could become its most successful product, a being who combines Ayanokoji's strategic precision with his own flamboyant chaos. Emerging from the White Room, he might infiltrate the advanced nurturing high school, as Ayanokoji does, but instead of working in the shadows, he'd dominate openly, turning classes against each other with theatrical flair. He could charm Class A's leaders like Sakayanagi into underestimating him, only to outmaneuver them in exams, or provoke ruin into reckless aggression, destabilizing Class C. His physical prowess would make him untouchable in physical challenges, while his intellect would unravel the school's psychological tests, proving his superiority while sowing discord. Unlike Ayanokoji, who manipulates for control, Koenji would act for his own amusement, seeing the school as a stage to showcase his perfection. The horror lies in Koenji's unpredictability. Unlike Ayanokoji, whose adaptability serves a purpose, Koenji's actions are driven by whim and ego, making him a chaotic force. If unleashed on the world, he could use his White Room-honed skills to manipulate global systems for his own entertainment. Imagine Koenji entering Japan's corporate or political spheres, as speculated in the previous theory about Ayanokoji remaking Japan, but with an anarchic approach. He might destabilize markets by leaking corporate secrets, not for reform, but to revel in the chaos, or charm political leaders into following his whims, creating a power vacuum for his own amusement. His physical prowess could make him a public icon, a celebrity athlete, influencer, or even a cult leader, while his intellect allows him to manipulate from behind the scenes, turning Japan into a stage for his perfect performance. The horror lies in Koenji's unpredictability. Unlike Ayanokoji, whose adaptability serves a purpose, Koenji's actions are driven by